Powered by the Montana Television Network. Montana This Morning continues on Montana's News Leader.
Day 7 of the partial government shutdown is causing some headaches. I'm Tom Hansen with the toll it's taking on federal employees.
And for a while yesterday, it may have seemed like we stepped back 30 years in time. Satellite, internet, and cell service all stopped working. What exactly happened? We have those details coming up. Good morning to you. It is 6:30 here on your final Friday of the year. I'm Missy O'Malley. Chet Lehman is on our weather today. Matt Elwell and Carson Vicroy are both off. The partial government shutdown is now into its 7th day, and it's expected to continue into next week. CBS's Tom Hansen is in New York with the headache that it's causing some of the 800,000 federal employees affected.
The Senate and the House both gavelled in and out in just minutes yesterday.
It's adjourned until 10 a.m. on Monday.
Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern tried and failed to introduce a measure in the Republican-led House to reopen the government.
I was hoping the Republicans were hearing what I was hearing back home from my constituents during the Christmas holiday, which is, you guys got to get back to Washington and reopen the government.
The partial government shutdown is now in its 7th day and is expected to continue into next week. Democrats take control of the House on January 3rd.
Compromise doesn't seem to be a word that the Democrats are willing to engage in at this point.
Democrats have refused to give President Trump $5 billion for a border wall. This isn't about the wall, the president wrote on Twitter. This is only about the Dems not letting Donald Trump and the Republicans have a win.
The most difficult part of this is the not knowing. We don't know when this will end.
About 44,000 Coast Guard employees are working without pay. Overall, about 800,000 federal employees are either working without pay or furloughed. These Coast Guard wives in Houston say the problems are building up.
He's got health conditions that we should be worrying about, not when we're going to get paid.
The Coast Guard is the only branch of the military affected by the shutdown because it's funded by the Department of Homeland Security, not the Department of Defense. Tom Hansen, CBS News.
Now, a new Reuters and Ipsos poll finds 47% of adults blame President Trump for that shutdown, 33% blame congressional Democrats, and 7% of people blame congressional Republicans.
I blame all of them.
I blame everybody. No.
That's it.
Chet joins me now. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Final Friday of the year, final weekend of the year. We've made it.
That's it.
Yeah.
I had my doubts, but here we are. Not a lot of weather to talk about for the most part. We do have this, though, a wind advisory in effect from tonight through the weekend. We're talking wind gusts 50, 60, maybe even 70 miles an hour possible. Saturday night out along the I-90 corridor. We'll update that with you in a few minutes. Meantime, your temperatures, that's okay. Stay inside. Make some chili. I'll be right over. Your planner today, because it's only going to warm up to 24. Missy will bring the cornbread. That'll be the plan.
Yes, I will.
Lots of sunshine. We'll put our sunglasses on, and then every single piece of clothing we own, because it's going to be a little chilly out there today. But again, the sun will shine, then the snow will come. When? Well, you got to wait for a few minutes, and then I'll tell you.
The suspense. Thank you, Chet. Now, we are going to stay in the mining city here for a moment here at 6:32. An armed man making strange statements fired several shots in a Butte office building yesterday before injuring himself by jumping out a window. MTN's John Amy was at the scene and has our details.
A bizarre and violent scene occurred in an office building in Uptown Butte early Thursday evening when a gunman fired several shots in the building and then leapt from the second-story window. The incident began about 4:30 when a man armed with a 9mm handgun entered the Butte Police Department's lobby on North Alaska Street, claiming he was in danger. He then left the lobby of the police department, walked across the street, and entered the Synesis 7 office building. Police followed him and began evacuating the employees.
And the officers continued to evacuate, and people were evacuating themselves because he had made some bizarre comments. I'm not sure exactly what he said prior to all the people evacuating from the building, but he did indicate that he would shoot anybody who wasn't wearing a badge.
Employees were able to escape the building unharmed, and that's when the gunman started firing through a second-story window.
He fired somewhere between 4 and 5 rounds from a 9mm handgun through the window in the office building on the second floor. The building across the street sustained a gunshot to one of the windows, and then he jumped out the window causing injury to himself and was taken into custody right outside the window.
The man was transported to St. James Healthcare with extreme injuries to his lower body. Investigators are still not sure what caused this violent outburst, but say the man was acting very erratically.
He said he needed some help, and he indicated somebody was after him. We don't know whether he was having some kind of a mental situation or he was under the influence of methamphetamine or some other narcotic.
The investigation into this violent incident continues. In Butte, John Amy, MTN News.
Now, at this time, police have only identified the suspected gunman as a 28-year-old male from Butte who remains hospitalized. The sheriff added that police did not fire any shots during that incident. And CenturyLink services are back after a disruption causing outages across Montana and several other states much of the day yesterday. Last night, the company said engineers and technicians identified a network problem that was affecting customer services. To Verizon customers, they were also suffering from internet outages because it uses CenturyLink to distribute its data.
It was all the way from Bozeman down to Sheridan, Wyoming. And I think there was over 50 towers, 50 towers that were affected.
Now in Bozeman, Verizon customers experienced spotty service, and many customers in Belgrade were without service for most of the day. And the state is asking a Gallatin County District Court to deny a judge, to have the judge deny a motion to throw out evidence from a suspected January Belgrade murder from last year. Joseph Paul DeWise is charged with deliberate homicide from the shooting of his wife. This month, DeWise's attorney filed a motion to suppress a recorded interview that DeWise gave to the Department of Health. His attorneys argue that he was forced to give a statement without being read his rights. This week, prosecutors filed to uplift that motion because they say the interviewer did not have him read DeWise's rights. Now, as the interview was voluntary, the trial is set to begin February 19th. And the 2019 Montana legislature gets underway at the state capitol on January 7th. Less than just a few weeks away. Now this week, MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison is giving us a preview of the session's big issues. Today, in the second part of his three-part series, Mike zeroes in on the debates over the state's spending priorities and taxes.
Democratic Governor Steve Bullock has an ambitious agenda in his proposed budget, including state funding for preschool, freezing tuition and need-based aid for state colleges, and a $290 million infrastructure package. But it also includes almost $80 million a year in new taxes to help pay for it all. And Republicans who control the legislature say that's a non-starter.
We don't have an appetite to pass any taxes, and I feel very confident in saying that.
Bullock is proposing higher taxes or fees on tobacco, beer, wine, lodging, rental cars, and investment advisors, many of whom live out of state. Democratic Senate Minority Leader John Sesso of Butte says tax increases should be judged on whether they're fair and what they fund, including tax relief on other items.
I'm sure there's probably a wad of tax bills down there to reduce taxes. Well, you can't reduce taxes in areas where you think tax relief is warranted unless we're taking advantage of taxes in areas where it's common practice.
Sesso also says Bullock's infrastructure plans are a good investment for all corners of the state, rural and urban. For the past several sessions, Republicans at the legislature have rejected major infrastructure bills that borrow money. But on education funding and programs, at least one Republican leader says that's a priority for the GOP as well.
We'll make sure we put the students of Montana first, whether it's K through 12, and maybe help some pre-K students, along with kids after they graduate from high school, to make sure they have the right path forward to jobs in Montana.
Still, Hertz says Republicans want to accomplish those goals within existing tax revenue. Governor Bullock and fellow Democrats wonder if that's possible and want lawmakers to keep their options and their minds open.
I sure hope that neither Democrats or Republicans will start drawing the lines in the sand in December because their constituents expect government to be funded.
I'd say some of those lines are already drawn, but during 4 months of a legislative session, there's plenty of time to see some shifting sands as well. At the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And coming up on Monday, Mike looks at another big issue for the 2019 legislature, drugs, both illegal and legal. And the world has lost a true hero. Richard Overton, the oldest surviving veteran of World War II, died at 112 years old. 6 years before the Titanic sank and nearly a decade before World War I began, Richard Overton was born. When Overton was just 35 years old, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, throwing the United States into World War II. Overton enlisted 9 months later. He rose to the rank of corporal, serving in places like Pearl Harbor, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, where he came under fire.
It's one of those things you're lucky to get out of. It's a lot of boys I know that got killed. A lot of troops got killed.
70 years after fighting in World War II, President Obama invited Overton to spend Veterans Day 2013 in Washington. Overton was admitted to the hospital with a case of pneumonia last week, right before he passed away. And happy Friday to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the final Friday of the year. Coming up, we head over the pond to look at migration issues affecting Europe, what officials are doing to work on that long-term solution. That's all ahead. But first, let's check in with Dana Jacobson to see your headlines this morning on CBS.
Ahead on CBS this morning, with no vote scheduled before the new year, the new Congress will likely be greeted by a government shutdown. We'll talk to White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. And Chris Van Cleve gives us a first look inside Delta's newest jet taking off next month. How the airline says it offers you more luxury. It's all coming up at 7. See you then.